When you feel like quitting, remember, it's not because you're weak. It's because you're exhausted from doing so much and going nowhere. You've been grinding, pushing, showing up day after day, but the results don't seem to match the energy. And that's where most people start to fall apart. Not because they can't take the pain, but because they start to believe the pain means it's not working, that it's all pointless. But here's the truth, and it's hard work alone is not enough. We've been sold this half truth our whole lives. Work hard and you'll succeed. No, is you can work like hell and still stay broke, still stay stuck, still stay invisible. Because effort without direction is chaos. It's running on a treadmill, pouring sweat, but never moving forward. And that realization, that's where people either level up or quit. You have to step back and ask, what am I actually working toward? What problem am I solving? Is my effort aligned with a system, a strategy, or am I just busy trying to drown out the fear of failure with more noise? People confuse activity with progress. They think being tired means they've accomplished something, but being exhausted isn't the goal. Being effective is. Think about it. You can chop wood with a dull axe for 10 hours and barely make a dent, or you can stop, sharpen the blade for 1 hour and finish the job in 3. Most people are terrified to stop and think to reflect because slowing down feels like falling behind. But it's the opposite. Awareness is acceleration. You don't become successful by simply outworking others. You become successful by outthinking them, outplanning them, and outlasting them. That's the real game. Look at the people you admire, the ones who dominate their space. They didn't just work hard. They worked smart. They reverse engineered their goals. They studied the patterns. They adjusted when something wasn't working. They didn't worship the grind. They used it to build leverage. Because here's the uncomfortable truth. No one wants to say out loud working hard on the wrong thing is a form of self-sabotage. You could be building someone else's dream, casing an illusion, or simply trying to prove your worth through effort rather than through results. This doesn't mean you stop working hard. It means you become strategic. You pause long enough to sharpen the blade to make sure your ladder is leaning against the right wall. And that takes courage, more courage than blind hustle, because it means confronting your own fear. It means asking, am I doing this because it matters or just because it's familiar? When you feel like quitting, remember, maybe it's not that you're too tired to go on. Maybe you're just tired of running in the wrong direction. Success doesn't go to the person who moves the fastest. It goes to the one who knows where they're going and refuses to stop until they get there. And sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is pause, think, adjust, then get back up and move with precision. Because when purpose and direction meet effort, everything changes. Don't just grind, build, don't just move, aim. Let that sink in and then go act like someone who finally gets it. There's a dangerous myth we rarely question, the belief that intelligence alone guarantees success. That if you're smart enough, clever enough, if your IQ is just a few points higher, the world will open its doors to you. But life doesn't reward intelligence in isolation. It rewards courage. It rewards execution. It rewards alignment. You can have the brightest mind in the room, but if you lack the discipline to apply that mind under pressure, to keep showing up when it's inconvenient, to take action even when there's doubt, your brilliance stays buried. And that's one of the greatest tragedies of our time, wasted potential. People who could have built empires but stayed stuck in theory. People who could have changed the game but kept waiting until they felt ready. You don't need more information. You need activation. You already know what to do. The real problem is that knowing isn't the same as doing. And deep down, you know that. That's why it hurts when someone else with half your intelligence passes you. It's not that they're better. It's that they moved. They acted. They were willing to fail in the real world instead of winning only in their head. Because the truth is smart people often lose. Not because they're incapable, but because they overthink. They get trapped in their own complexity. They analyze every outcome, every variable, every possible risk until they've talked themselves out of the very thing they were born to pursue. They seek perfection. But life isn't about perfection. It's about progress. You don't need a flawless plan. You need a plan with motion. And more importantly, you need the guts to test it, revise it, break it, rebuild it, and keep going. That's where hard work balances intelligence. You combine strategic thinking with relentless effort. You study, yes. You reflect, yes. But you also build while you learn. You execute while uncertain. You create before you're comfortable. That's the real formula. It's not either or. It's not hard work or smarts. It's hard work and smarts applied, fused, aligned. And here's what most people miss every time you take action on what you evolve. The gap between theory and practice closes. The feedback sharpens your thinking. The results refine your vision. You become not just someone who knows, but someone who builds. And that transformation is psychological. You stop being a thinker and become a doer. You stop identifying with potential and start identifying with impact. Because there's something spiritual, even sacred, about living in alignment with what you know you're capable of. Every time you take bold action, despite uncertainty, every time you move instead of freezy, you send a message to your own mind, I'm not here to waste this life. So ask yourself, are you just smart? Or are you smart and brave? Do you know the way? Are you actually walking it? Knowledge without action is a silent tragedy. But intelligence fused with execution, that's where lives change. That's where legacies begin. You don't need to be the smartest in the room. You just need to be the one who dares to use what they know. Let that truth hit you, not to shame you, but to wake you up. Because when intellect meets execution, mediocrity doesn't stand a chance. One of the most overlooked components of success, and I mean real success, the kind that's sustainable and meaningful, is the ability to endure the mundane, not the dramatic, not the exciting, but the boring, repetitive grind that nobody applauds. Because the truth is, most of your growth doesn't happen during peak moments. It happens in the silence, in the stillness, in those lonely, ordinary hours when no one's watching and nothing feels urgent yet what you do still matters. This is where most people quietly quit. They don't quit at the loud decoration. They quit micro decisions, the skip practice, the half-hearted effort, the excuse that just today won't hurt. But here's what you need to understand. Excellence lives in repetition. You don't become great by doing something once. You become great by doing something 1,000 times and still showing up the next day to do it again. That's the part of success that's not sexy, the grind. The dull, uncelebrated repetitions that make you stronger, sharper, better. And ironically, this is the exact stage where smart people struggle the most. Why? Because they crave stimulation. They want the next challenge, the next idea, the next dopamine hit. They overvalue variety and undervalue consistency. And in doing so, they sabotage the very system that creates mastery. It's not about doing more. It's about doing what works long enough for it to work. This is where hard work becomes a spiritual practice. It's not just effort, it's devotion. Think about it. You train your mind, your body, your craft not once, not when it's convenient, but over and over through fatigue, through doubt, through boredom. That's when something deeper activates inside you. You stop chasing motivation and start cultivating identity. You're no longer just someone who wants success. You become someone who embodies the habits that lead there. That's the shift. And this is where many give up. Not because it's too hard, but because it's too repetitive. They confuse boredom with misalignment. They say, maybe this isn't my path, when in truth, they're just avoiding the weight of discipline. But here's the reality. Your future is hidden in your daily routine, not in the next big leap, not in the once-a-year opportunity, but in what you do consistently when no one's clapping. And every time you push through those small, uninspiring moments, you prove to yourself that you're not here to dabble. You're here to dominate, even when it's slow, even when it's quiet, even when it doesn't feel like it's working yet. Because deep down, you know, results don't come from bursts of energy. They come from sustained effort. And if you can master that, if you can fall in love with the process, if you can learn to keep going when the initial excitement fades, then you've already separated yourself from 99% of people. That's not hype. That's math. Most people quit too soon. Most people want the outcome without the pattern. But you're different. You understand that success isn't a mood. It's a discipline. It's what you do when it stops being fun. It's how you act when the camera's off. It's the work you do when you're tired, uninspired, and no one's watching. Because that's when your character gets built. That's when your edge gets sharper. That's when your future gets formed quietly, steadily, invisibly until it becomes undeniable. So if it feels repetitive right now, good. That means you're doing it right. And the one who keeps going through the boredom becomes the one the world can't ignore. If you really want to understand what separates successful people from those who only wish for success, it comes down to this. They don't just think, they act. Not impulsively, not recklessly, but decisively. We live in a culture addicted to overthinking, paralysis by analysis. People are reading books, taking courses, watching motivational content day after day, and doing nothing with it. It's a comfortable kind of procrastination. It feels productive, but it's not progress. And here's the dangerous part. The smarter you are, the easier it is to get trapped in this loop. Because intelligence gives you the tools to justify your inaction. You create elaborate reasons why it's not the right time, why it's not perfect yet, why you should wait until you're ready, but you're never fully ready. Nobody is. What separates the doers from the dreamers isn't that they have more confidence. It's that they have more courage. The courage to take the first step without knowing the whole path. The courage to ship the product before it's flawless. The courage to walk into discomfort and trust that they'll figure it out along the way. It's action, not thought, that transforms potential into results. Now, I'm not saying you shouldn't think deeply. Of course you should. Critical thinking, reflection, and strategy, those are essential, but they're only valuable if they lead to execution. Think of it this way. Thought is like sharpening the blade. It's necessary. But if you spend your whole life sharpening and never swing, what's the point? There's a philosophy behind this that echoes throughout history. The Stoics taught it. The samurai lived it. Even modern psychology backs it. Clarity often comes after movement, not before. That means if you're waiting to feel confident, waiting to be certain, you'll never start. But if you move anyway, you earn that confidence through action because motion builds momentum, and momentum changes everything. You make a small move. Maybe it's clumsy, maybe it's imperfect, but suddenly you've shifted from being an observer of life to a participant. You're in the game now. And here's what's beautiful about that. Once you're in motion, the fear starts to fade. The resistance loses power. You begin to realize that most of the obstacles were mental constructs, not real barriers. That job you didn't apply for because you thought you weren't qualified. You could have learned on the job. That business you didn't start because the market was too saturated. It was just an excuse dressed up as logic. That conversation you avoided, the one you rehearsed 100 times in your head, it could have changed everything. But you won't know until you act. Now, this doesn't mean being reckless. Action should be informed, not impulsive. But it should never be delayed indefinitely in the name of perfection. You learn by doing. You grow by doing. You become by doing. You can't theorize your way into strength. You build it through friction, through resistance, through trial, through the mess of real world effort. That's how your ideas go from potential energy to kinetic power. And once you taste it, once you realize that the gap between where you are and where you want to be is mostly filled with steps you haven't taken yet, something clicks. You stop hiding behind preparation. You stop idolizing clarity, and you start choosing movement over excuses. So if you're standing at the edge of an idea, a decision, a dream, and you're waiting for a sign, this is it. The world doesn't need more thinkers. It needs more movers, because thought alone can build a fantasy, but action builds a life. One of the greatest lies we're sold is this idea of balance, that success should come easy without sacrifice, that you can build a powerful life, a meaningful legacy, and still maintain comfort at all times. That's not how it works, at least not in the real world. Every meaningful achievement comes at a cost. It demands something from you, and most of the time, what it demands is discipline, not in the shallow, motivational poster sense of the word, but in a raw, uncomfortable reality of what it means to do what must be done, especially when you don't feel like doing it. See, the human brain is a master negotiator. It knows how to rationalize delay and seduce you into inaction. It whispers, "You've worked hard enough. You deserve a break. There's always tomorrow." And in isolation, those thoughts might sound reasonable, but stack enough of them together over weeks and months, and you end up with regret, not because you were lazy, but because you consistently chose what felt good in the moment over what was necessary for your growth. Discipline is the ability to override that voice, to override biology, emotion, and impulse, and act in alignment with your values, not your feelings, because feelings fluctuate. Discipline doesn't. Now, let me be clear. Discipline doesn't mean punishment. It doesn't mean living like a monk or grinding yourself into the ground for no reason. It means structure. It means choosing your suffering deliberately. Because whether you like it or not, you will suffer. You either suffer the pain of discipline today or the pain of failure, regret, and mediocrity later. That's a hard truth, but it's liberating. Because once you accept that suffering is non-negotiable, you can stop running from it. You can begin to use it. And that's where something shifts when you stop seeing discipline as deprivation and start seeing it as power. Every morning you get up when it's easier to hit snooze, that's power. Every time you show up to your craft, to your goal, to your vision, even when no one's watching, that's power. Every time you hold the line, when your mind tries to pull you off course and you say, "No, this is who I am now," that's power. And here's the real kicker that kind of power compounds. It builds day by day, rep by rep. It rewires you. It becomes your identity. Because the truth is we don't rise to our goals, we fall to our standards. And discipline is how you raise those standards permanently. Not because you hope you'll act differently in the future, but because you train yourself to act differently now. And you'll notice something strange once you start living like this. Most people think you're extreme. You'll hear things like, "You're obsessed. You need to relax. You're taking it too seriously." But understand this, those comments don't reflect you. They reflect them. They reflect their limitations, their comfort zone, their fear of what your discipline reminds them they're not doing. So let them talk. Let them laugh. Let them doubt. Because while they're talking, you're building. While they're sleeping, you're sharpening. While they're watching, you're working. Discipline is not a punishment. It's a decision to live with intention, to refuse the seduction of average, to chase something greater, even when no one claps for you. So if you're waiting for motivation, stop. Motivation is fleeting. Discipline is forged. And if you want a life worth remembering, worth passing on, worth being proud of, then start forging it now. Because the life you want is already within reach, but only if you're willing to pay the price in full. There's a strange paradox when it comes to success. Everyone says they want it. They talk about dreams, about purpose, about doing something great. But when it comes time to act, to sacrifice, to stay consistent, to stay hungry long after the applause dies down, they fold. Not because they're weak, but because they've misunderstood the nature of the game. See, success doesn't come to those who want it once. It comes to those who want it every single day, especially on the days when it's hard, especially when it's boring, especially when no one believes in them. And that's the part no one talks about, the relentlessness of staying in the game. The people who rise, truly rise, are not always the smartest or the most gifted. They're the ones who refuse to go away. They're the ones who stay locked in when others drift. They're the ones who say, "I don't care how long this takes. I'm not leaving without what I came for," because success is less about intensity and more about consistency. That's what most people get wrong. They think success is one massive leap, one breakthrough, one viral moment, one magic opportunity. But the truth, success is boring. It's the result of doing the same thing over and over and over with precision, with focus, with fire until the world is forced to pay attention. Now, this isn't just motivational talk. This is neurological. It's psychological. The human brain is built on reinforcement. Whatever you do repeatedly becomes who you are. Not what you do once in a while. Not what you do when it's convenient. What you do daily. So if your actions reflect hunger only when things are exciting, your results will reflect temporary energy. But if you stay hungry when you're tired, when you're doubted, when it seems like nothing is working, that's where transformation happens. That's where your identity shifts from someone who wants success to someone who demands it from life through sheer presence. Let me be blunt here. Your competition is not just other people. Your real competition is your former self. The old patterns, the distractions, the excuses that have kept you average. Every day, you're either feeding the part of you that's chasing growth or the part of you that's settling. And that hunger, that daily hunger, is a decision. It's a commitment to stay uncomfortable. Because comfort is seductive. It whispers that you've done enough, that you've earned the right to coast. But the moment you let go of hunger, you let go of greatness. And don't confuse hunger with desperation. Desperation is emotional, driven by fear. Hunger is purposeful, driven by vision. It's the difference between someone who's running from failure and someone who's running toward impact. So ask yourself, are you in this for a phase or are you in it for a legacy? Because staying hungry isn't about chasing money or applause. It's about building something that matters. It's about pushing your capacity until you become the kind of person whose life commands respect. Not because you shouted the loudest, but because you stayed the longest. So if you feel like giving up, good. That means you're close to the point where most people do. And if you can outlast that moment, if you can dig just 1 inch deeper when everything in you says, stop, that's where your separation begins. That's where average ends and mastery begins. Success is never owned. It's rented, and rent is due every damn day. So here's the truth. Hard work matters. Intelligence matters. But what truly separates the successful from the forgotten is the discipline to show up every single day, even when no one's watching. You don't need to have it all figured out. You just need to keep moving forward. Stay sharp. Stay hungry. And remember, success doesn't come to those who wait. It comes to those who work while they wait. If this message spoke to you, like the video, subscribe to the channel, and share it with someone who needs to hear this today. Now go out there